March 5th, 1973. The day I turned 50. I don't remember the cake. I don't remember the gifts. But I do remember this. Standing in front of my bathroom mirror, looking into my own eyes and whispering, I still have time. It's funny how the mind tricks you at that age. You feel strong. You feel capable. You think the best years are still ahead. And then one day, you wake up at 80 and realize you were wrong. No one warns you that 50 is the last checkpoint before the shift begins. That the next 3 decades will pass, not in years, but in heartbeats. That the friends you swore would be around forever will begin fading, not always by choice. That your reflection will slowly, subtly betray you, until one day you don't recognize the person staring back. If you're in your 50s, listen carefully, because I'm about to tell you something I wish I had understood before it was too late. I am your amazing buddy, the Wisdom Professor, and welcome to the Wisdom in Abundance community, where timeless wisdom meets real-life experience. Here we uncover life's deepest lessons, untold truths, and powerful insights to help you navigate the journey ahead with clarity and purpose. If you love learning from those who've walked the path before you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a piece of wisdom that could change your life. Now, back to business. At 50, I told myself a story, a convincing one, that there was still time to slow down later, time to fix strained relationships, time to finally start living the way I always intended. Work was important, responsibilities couldn't wait, but my dreams, my health, my happiness, I convinced myself they could. So I worked, I planned, I saved. I thought I was doing everything right. And then, life happened. The phone calls slowed. Friends who were once my everyday companions became names I only saw on funeral announcements. The aches in my body weren't temporary anymore. The time I thought I had, it slipped through my fingers before I even realized I was holding it. The harsh truth? Life doesn't pause because you're busy. It doesn't wait for you to finally feel ready to live. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your best years preparing for a future that disappears before you even reach it. Now at 80, I look back and I see the blind spots. The things I should have valued more. The things I should have let go of sooner. And most painfully, the things I never even gave myself a chance to experience. But you still have time. If you're in your 50s, you still have a choice. And I'm going to tell you the lessons I learned too late so you don't make the same mistakes I did. Lesson number 1. Your body is your greatest asset. I remember being a boy, running barefoot through the fields, chasing the wind like it was a game I could win. My legs were strong, my lungs full. I never thought twice about jumping over fences, climbing trees, or racing my friends to the old oak at the end of the road. My body felt invincible. Then came my 30s, my 40s, my 50s. I wasn't a boy anymore, but I still felt strong. A few aches here and there, but nothing I couldn't shake off. If I was tired, I worked through it. If my back ached, I blamed the chair. If my heart pounded too fast, I told myself it was just stress. I had time to take care of myself later. But later never came, because by the time I needed my body, it had already started slipping away from me. At 50, you feel fine. At 60, you start noticing. At 70, you realize you should have done something sooner. And at 80, you wake up one day and find that the simple things, walking up a flight of stairs, bending to tie your shoes, even standing for too long, feel like climbing a mountain with no peak in sight. You don't lose your strength all at once. It happens slowly, subtly, until one day you reach for something and realize your body no longer listens the way it used to. I wish someone had told me, take care of it now while you still can. Move, stretch, feed your body with what it needs, not just what you crave. Because once your body begins to fail you, all the money you saved, all the plans you made, mean nothing. Without your health, your freedom disappears. You don't think about these things when you're young, but one day you will. And by then, the body you once took for granted may not be there to carry you anymore. If you're in your 50s, don't wait. Your body is your greatest asset, and once you lose it, you don't get it back. Someday, that word stole more from me than anything else ever could. Lesson number 2. Stop waiting for someday. If you've ever stood on a train platform watching as the last car disappears into the horizon, you know the feeling. That moment when you realize you missed it, and there won't be another one coming anytime soon. That's how life works. We watch opportunities pass us by, always assuming there will be another one, another chance to take that trip, another day to say I love you, another time to chase that dream. But what if there isn't? I once met a man, 56 years old, who spent his entire career building a business he never really loved. When I retire, he told me, I'll finally travel the world. He had a list, places he dreamed of visiting, things he swore he'd do someday when he had the time. 2 years later, he suffered a stroke. He never left the country. He never even left the state. Then there's the woman I knew, 63 years old, who spent decades saving for a future with her husband. They had it all planned. The vacations, the adventures, the time they never got to spend while raising kids and working long hours. Then one evening, he didn't come home. A sudden heart attack. She was left with the money, the plans, the someday they had dreamed of, but no one to share it with. I used to believe that time was something I could control, that if I waited just a little longer, everything would align perfectly. But time isn't something you hold on to. It's something that slips through your hands the moment you hesitate. How many people have you seen say, I'll call them next week, and then next week never comes? How many dreams have been postponed until they're no longer possible? In 2012, Steve Jobs said, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. He was right. And yet, so many of us do exactly that. We wait, we hesitate, we assume there's more time until there isn't. So if there's something you want to do, do it. If there's someone you need to forgive, call them. If there's a place you've always dreamed of seeing, go. Because life doesn't wait, and neither should you. Lesson number 3, let go of regrets and grudges. August 16, 1999. That was the day my childhood friend passed away. I hadn't spoken to him in over 20 years. We grew up together, inseparable like brothers. But one argument, one stubborn moment of pride, and we let silence replace laughter. I always told myself, I'll reach out someday. But someday never came. Instead, I got a phone call telling me he was gone. I stood at his funeral, surrounded by people who had more recent memories of him than I did. I watched as they celebrated his life, while I stood there haunted by all the years we lost. All because neither of us was willing to say 2 simple words, I'm sorry. If you're holding on to a grudge right now, ask yourself this, is it worth it? Is being right more important than the memories you could still make? Is your pride worth more than a friendship, a relationship, or even just a moment of peace? Nelson Mandela once said, resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. And he was right. The weight of anger doesn't fall on the person you resent, it falls on you. Do you know what anger does to the body? A study from Harvard in 2016 found that holding on to grudges increases your risk of heart disease, weakens your immune system, and even accelerates aging. It literally eats you from the inside out. I've seen people carry grudges for decades, against siblings, against friends, even against parents who aren't alive to apologize. I've watched families split over things that won't matter in 5 years. And I've seen too many people sitting in hospital beds, wishing they could turn back time and fix what pride once refused to. So let me ask you, who do you need to forgive? Maybe it's a friend you lost touch with. Maybe it's a family member who made a mistake. Or maybe it's yourself. Maybe you've spent too many years blaming yourself for something you can't change. If that's the case, hear me clearly. You are allowed to forgive yourself too. Life is short, and regret is a heavy thing to carry. Let it go, not for them, but for you. Lesson number 4, focus on relationships, not just work. Tell me, when was the last time you sat down with someone you love and truly listened? No distractions, no rushing, just being present. We spend the first half of our lives building careers, building businesses, building reputations. We tell ourselves, I need to work harder, I need to provide more, I need to secure the future. And while we're busy securing the future, we fail to realize that we're losing the present. And then, something happens. Retirement comes. The kids move out, the emails stop, and suddenly the phone isn't ringing like it used to. The people you were too busy for, they moved on. The friendships you neglected, they faded. The partner who once shared your dreams, you wake up one morning and realize you barely know each other anymore. I've sat across from too many old men who spent their youth in boardrooms, only to spend their final years in empty rooms, staring at walls covered in framed achievements. But no family photos. I've known women who spent decades running businesses, only to retire and realize they never built anything deeper than transactions. When you get older, people will tell you that you don't need anyone, that independence is strength, that solitude is peaceful. But let me tell you something, it's a lie. The truth? The people you surround yourself with today, your spouse, your friends, your family, even the colleagues you take for granted, they are the ones who will define the quality of your old age. They are the ones who will sit by your hospital bed, who will call to check in, who will remind you that you are still needed, still loved, still alive. Think about it. When was the last time you made time for a friend instead of making an excuse? When was the last time you asked your spouse, "How was your day?" and actually cared about the answer? When was the last time you visited a parent or grandparent? Not out of obligation, but out of love. I want you to answer this honestly in the comments. If you lost your job today, if the business closed, if the titles disappeared, who would still be there? Who in your life is there for you, not for what you provide? Because at the end of your life, no one will ask how many hours you worked, how many deals you closed, or how many promotions you earned. They will ask, who did you love? And who loved you back? Lesson number 5, happiness is in simplicity. I once thought happiness came in numbers, a bigger paycheck, a bigger house, a bigger name in the world. I spent years believing that if I just had more, I'd finally feel satisfied. But do you know what I learned? More never ends. The moment you get the dream car, you start looking at the newer model. The moment you buy the bigger house, you realize someone else has a mansion. The moment you reach one goal, there's always another waiting. And so, you chase and chase and chase, until one day, you wake up and wonder, when did life stop feeling fulfilling? In 2010, a Princeton University study found that once you make about $75,000 a year, more money doesn't significantly increase happiness. After that, it's not about income, it's about quality of life. Yet most people spend their entire existence thinking the next raise, the next purchase, the next upgrade will finally bring them peace. But ask anyone at the end of their life what truly mattered, and they won't mention cars. They won't mention bank accounts. They won't talk about the square footage of their home. Instead, they'll talk about moments, sitting on the porch, watching the sunset with a loved one, laughing with an old friend over a meal, the quiet mornings spent with a cup of coffee and a peaceful heart. Do you know what I wish I did sooner? Simplified. I wish I had spent less time accumulating and more time appreciating. Because the happiest people I've ever met weren't the ones with the most, they were the ones who needed the least. So let me ask you, if you lost everything tomorrow, the titles, the possessions, the luxuries, what would still bring you joy? If the only thing left was who you are and the people you love, would you still feel whole? If you can answer that question honestly, you're already wealthier than most poor. Lesson number 6, your legacy is not money, it's how you made people feel. I've attended many funerals in my lifetime, and do you know what I've never heard? A eulogy about bank accounts. No one stands at the podium and says, he drove the finest car, or she had the most expensive jewelry. No one talks about the size of the house they lived in or the brands they wore. Instead, they talk about who they were. They talk about the kindness they showed, the time they gave, the way they made people feel when they walked into a room. There was a man in my town, wealthy beyond measure. He built an empire, had everything people dream of, money, power, influence. But when he passed, his funeral was empty. No laughter, no warm stories, no family leaning on each other in remembrance. Just a quiet service, attended by a few employees who once worked under him. The man had spent his whole life building wealth, but never built relationships. And in the end, he left behind everything, except a reason for people to miss him. Then there was Margaret, a retired school teacher. Never owned much, never made millions. But at her funeral, the church overflowed. Former students, neighbors, even the local grocery store clerk, all came to share stories of the woman who always had a kind word, who always made time, who made people feel seen. Her wealth wasn't in money, it was in impact. A 2021 Harvard study found that the quality of your relationships is the biggest predictor of life satisfaction. Not wealth, not status, human connection. And yet, too many people spend their years obsessed with accumulating things, forgetting that in the end, it's not things that matter, it's the imprint you leave on the hearts around you. So ask yourself, if you were gone tomorrow, what would people say about you? Would they talk about what you had, or about how you made them feel? Would they remember the things you owned, or the love you gave? Because at the end of it all, your legacy is not measured in dollars. It's measured in the moments you shared, the kindness you spread, and the way your presence made life a little lighter for someone else. Lesson number 7. Enjoy the little moments, they matter most. It's funny, the things you end up remembering, not the deadlines, not the errands, not the days you spent rushing from one obligation to the next. Those moments blur together, fade into nothing. But the small things, the simple, quiet, ordinary moments, those stay with you forever. Like the time I sat on the porch with an old friend, drinking coffee as the sun came up, talking about everything and nothing, with no place to be and no clock to race. Or the afternoon my grandson grabbed my hand just to show me how fast he could run across the yard, his laughter echoing in the air like music. Or that rainy Sunday when my wife and I stayed in bed just a little longer, listening to the sound of the world slowing down outside. I didn't know then that those moments would be the ones I'd hold on to the tightest. But now at 80, I see it so clearly. It was never about the big milestones. It was always about the little joys in between. A 2019 study from the University of British Columbia found that people who take time to appreciate small, everyday experiences report greater overall happiness than those who chase only major achievements. And yet, most of us spend our lives looking ahead, waiting for big moments to validate us, never realizing that true happiness is already happening in the in-between spaces of our lives. When was the last time you truly noticed the way the morning air feels on your skin, or the way your loved one's eyes light up when they laugh? When was the last time you stopped in the middle of a busy day, looked around, and thought, this moment right here is enough? Because in the end, it won't be the years that mattered most. It will be the minutes, the seconds, the stolen glimpses of joy that we either held on to or let slip away while we were too busy chasing something bigger. So today, wherever you are, whoever you're with, pause, take a breath, look around. This moment, it's one of the ones you'll remember. Most people think they'll see old age coming, that one day they'll wake up, feel a little slower, and say, all right, I'm old now. But that's not how it happens. Aging doesn't knock on your door, it slips in quietly, unnoticed, until one day you look around and realize the time is gone. You don't wake up at 80 feeling old. You wake up feeling exactly the same until your body reminds you that you're not. Until the people around you start calling you sir or ma'am with a quiet politeness that wasn't there before. Until the waiter hands you the senior discount menu without asking. Until your doctor stops saying, let's fix this, and starts saying, let's manage this. The scariest part? You never feel ready for old age. You think you have time to prepare. You think you'll see it coming. But one day, you'll reach for something on a high shelf and realize you need help. You'll hear a song from your youth and realize no one else remembers it. You'll sit in a room full of younger people and feel invisible. This is the wake-up call no one gives you when you're 50. That the life you're living today is the one that determines the kind of old age you will have. Not tomorrow, not someday. Right now. So ask yourself, are you building the kind of life you'll be proud to grow old in? Or are you wasting the years you'll one day wish you could get back? If you're in your 50s, don't wait for life to remind you of what truly matters. Take care of yourself, because no one else will do it for you. Cherish your time, because once it's gone, you won't get it back. And most importantly, live. Not someday, not later. Now. Because one day, you will sit where I am now, looking back instead of forward. And I hope when that time comes, you won't be filled with regrets about the chances you didn't take, the love you didn't embrace, the moments you let slip away. I hope you'll look back and say, I lived fully, I loved deeply, I have no unfinished business with life. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these lessons spoke to you the most? What is something you have learned about life that others should know? Drop a comment below. I'll be reading every single one. And if you found this helpful, if you believe wisdom should be shared, hit that like button and subscribe. Because life is short, but the lessons we leave behind, they last forever. Live now before it's too late.